Hi guys. This is a little different because today I am not doing typical vlogging. I'm actually doing a video with a purpose. Who knew? Today, as a matter of fact, is National Book Lovers Day, and I thought, what better way to celebrate than to finally show you all the books I have read up to this point. Today is the 9th of August, so you will be able to see all that I have been reading in the last 8 months. They are all on this table. They're kind of out of frame a little bit, but they're all there, some of them. And I have my trusty list of all of my books. I write down every book that I read. It's kind of like a fun way for me, like at the end of the year, to like count it up and see how many I've read. And as you can tell from the table, there's a lot there. And so how we're gonna do this is start from my most recent books, and then we're gonna work our way backwards, all the way back to January. So without further ado, let's see what I've been reading. Okay, so ironically enough, I told you that every book was here, almost. The first book that I have for you, I actually don't have because it was a book that my sister let me borrow, but I'm still going to tell you about it anyway. It is called Without Merit. It is a Colleen Hoover book. I have an obsession with Colleen Hoover. She is a crazy good writer. And Without Merit is one of her earlier books. It's super interesting because it deals more with like mental health and like family relationships. There is still like romantic relationships, but it's not as heavily focused on. The next book that I have, I actually can show you a physical copy, and of course the first time that I try to grab a book, everything almost topples over. It's fine. I just gotta be a little more careful. Alright. This book is called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I know I've talked about this in vlogs recently, but I finished it over the car ride to Minneapolis, and let me tell you, another fantastic book. It's set over like not quite 30 years, maybe like 25-ish, and when I say that, I say it as like it starts in like 1994, and ends like 5 or 6 years ago. But it was recently released. And what's interesting is that it's following these two people, Sadie and Sam, as they like create video games, because they're huge gamers and like they go on to create their own like gaming company. And then you also like get really heavy and deep, and almost sob like the last like 100 pages. There's something that happens that throws the whole book into turmoil, and I won't spoil it, but I really was close to tears. But yes, this is definitely a contender for one of my favorite books this year. Up next, we have a book that I cannot show you because it is my book, but my mom is currently reading it. So it's called All Your Perfects. It is another Colleen Hoover book, and this one ripped my heart out and then put it back together again. It just, especially like the last like 2 or 3 chapters, because there's a very intense letter that gets read, and like I'm just like sobbing hysterically and just like reminding myself that these characters are not real, which I feel like I have to do with every single one of her books because she's just that great of a storyteller. The 2 main characters end up getting married. But then you see, like, everything that led up to it. And then you see, like, where they are currently. And their present is, like, not great. They're on the verge of divorce. They have fertility issues. Okay, so Quinn and Graham. And they keep getting denied by adoption agencies because Graham, when he was a teenager, drove while drunk, and then his friend, like, ended up dying. And his friend's brother got, like, really injured. And so they can't, like, get accepted by any of these adoption agencies. So you just see, it's, like, it's such a genius way to tell it, because you see in the past when they're so hopeful and just, like, so in love and so in sync. And then you see, like, what can happen in the future when, like, unforeseen obstacles hit your path. Like, how just you can fall apart so quickly. But it was so good. So good. Next up is a book that I've definitely shown you a couple of times. This one is called Bringing Down the Duke. And this one is the first of a trilogy. The trilogy is called A League of Extraordinary Women. And so it's all of these women in Victorian England, like late 1870s, and they're suffragists. And this one, they're trying to get, like, the help of a very influential duke, but then the main character, like, ends up, like, falling in love with him, and it's very dramatic and full of just insaneness, but such a good story. Next up is a paperback. I don't read a lot of paperbacks, so when I do, it's an occasion. So this is called Red Queen. This is the first in a book of 5, or a book series of 5. And basically it's a world where there's 2 different types of people. So there's reds and silvers. Reds have red blood and silvers have silver blood. And then they have all of these, like, crazy abilities. They can, like, manipulate air and, you know, break things, or even, like, create things out of nothing, or just, like, you know, they can manipulate fire and all of these cool things. And then the whole plot is centered around a girl who is a red, but she's got, like, a genetic mutation that allows her to also have silver abilities. So then the silvers, like, take her and pretend that she's just been a missing silver princess. And then there's, like, romance. Not a lot, but just, like, enough to, like, keep you interested. And lots of bloodshed, lots of carnage. Revolution. There's an underground group of revolutionaries called the Scarlet Guard. And there's, like, people who come back from the dead, and epic fight scenes, and Mare is the main character's name, and she can manipulate lightning and, like, create lightning. Next up is an interesting book. And when I told my mom that I was reading this, she was kind of disturbed, but it's a very good book. This book is called Bittersweet: How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole. So the whole premise of why this author wrote this book was because she wanted to figure out why people were, like, drawn to sad music and sad movies, and that kind of thing. And then it led her to this, like, to writing this book, and about all of these different things related to, you know, sadness and grief and accepting death, and kind of, it's called a bittersweet personality, where, like, you kind of balance the not so great things of life with the great things. And this book kind of like hit me really hard. There's some great things in here. And she's just like a master of words. Some of these texts and passages I actually marked because like they were just that wonderfully written. So I guess this one is like a memoir kind of and like inspirational. It's not actually like a fictional story with like a plot. So it's always nice to change it up a little bit. Next one is Enchante, which I know I've talked about a lot. And I know I've talked about in vlogs and I've told the story before, but basically it's set in the French Revolution, which would be like 1789, just after the American Revolution. But this one, there's a spin in that France has magicians, and so it follows this one girl who's a magician, and she is like, her brother's a gambler, and she's trying to get enough money so that she and her sister can live. So it like follows her as she like takes on the royal court in the middle of revolutionary France. It's so good. And then she meets a guy who is a balloonist, and there's like drama there. And then there's a creepy Viscount, and then a really, really nice Baron. And it's so deliciously dramatic. Ugh, I loved it. Next couple are library books. So, The President's Daughter. I think I finished that like last week or a week and a half ago. But it was written by James Patterson in collaboration with Bill Clinton. And it follows a fictional president ex-president, as his daughter gets kidnapped by a group of terrorists out of retaliation. It was very intense. But I loved it. It was so good. So action-packed. Like, I love James Patterson. I have a couple more of his books. And he is just, like, a great thriller writer. Next up, Mary, Queen of Scotland and the Isles. You guys, I love Mary, Queen of Scots. She is like, just, like, I love her. And this book took her life and all of the, like, historical facts, but, like, wrote it as if it were, like, a novel, like one of the ones that I just showed you. Like, it was a story with actual characters and actual conversations. And it was kind of like a historical nonfiction adventure. And then next up we have Beach Music. Follows this guy, and his wife commits suicide. And then his wife's parents sue him for custody, but he wins. So he takes his daughter and he goes to Italy. And then like a few years later, his best friend wants him and his ex-girlfriend from high school to write the screenplay for a short series about their lives. And they're from South Carolina. And it just like, it traces the whole evolution. So like you get to see so his name is Jack. So you get to see Jack's parents' story. And then you get to see, and then his wife's name was Shyla. So then you get to see Shyla's parents' story and how Shyla's parents kind of impacted her and how it all culminated. Like literally every story from every character culminates with and connects to Shyla's suicide in some way. It was so good. I loved it. I couldn't, it took me a minute to get into it. The first couple of chapters, a little slow. But like once you get over that hump, it's fabulous. It's so good. I loved it. Like, it just made my heart happy. Next up, moving right along, is Paradise Alley. This one is a Virgin River novel. What's cool about the Virgin River novels is that it follows different characters. So it could follow a new character, or it could be an old character who was just supporting in a previous novel. So this one follows Ricky after he is injured in Iraq, and kind of his whole evolution and his whole healing process. It's so good. If you haven't watched the show on Netflix, you need to. And don't put this out of your mind, because we got a lot more Virgin River books to cover. Next up is We Were Liars. This one was actually written in 2014, but I feel like recently it's gained popularity. And this one, like, when you get to, like, the last few pages, like, you finally understand, like, what actually, like, went on and what happened. And it just totally shocked me. And it is, like, it's a fantastic novel. And it's written, like, I read this in, like, 3 hours. So it's a really fast read. The characters are very, like, interesting, and, like, the narrator is a little unreliable, so you don't really know what happens until you see it from the point of view from one of the adults, because it's from the narration of, like, a 16-year-old. So when the adults finally tell the story, you know what really happened. And when you find out, like, what actually happened, my mouth was on the floor. I had to, like, pick it up and have a doctor reattach my jaw together. That's how good this was. Okay. The People We Hate at the Wedding is another library book, but it was hilarious. So basically, these kids are half siblings, and their older sister is, like, her dad is French, and so she was always, like, away at boarding school or going on these super exotic vacations, and she was never super close with her two younger siblings. And then she is getting married, and the whole family comes together in England for her wedding, and it is just so endearing and so, like, funny and just outrageous and obnoxious. And then the last library book that I have is The Shadows of Swanford Abbey. This one was set in the 1800s again, in a little countryside town, so away from the hustle and bustle of London. And it's like Agatha Christie and Jane Austen had a child, and this novel was the result. Alright, next up, Under the Tuscan Sun. This is a memoir, and it follows a professor in San Francisco as she and her family buy a Tuscan villa, and it follows them as they renovate it and just their different adventures in Tuscany, different holidays that they've spent there. There's, like, recipes and just tons of funny stories and anecdotes. One of my favorites. Alright, next up, we have One Summer in Paris. This is a, like, coming of age novel almost, if the woman coming of age was, like, in her 40s. Because, like, her daughter is getting ready to go to college, and her daughter wants to travel before she goes to college. And then in the midst of this, her name is Grace. She learns that her husband had an affair with the babysitter. And then, so she obviously, and what's so horrible is that she learns this on their anniversary dinner where she surprises him with the trip to Paris because her mom's French. So, like, it's just like she just couldn't catch a break. So then she goes to Paris and she meets Audrey, who's English, and they both kind of help each other out, and they both kind of learn how to adapt to this new world and how to kind of, be on their own and accept themselves and life. So good. Next up, I told you not to forget Virgin River because we have another Virgin River book. This one is called Temptation Ridge. This one follows a side character from the last novel. And you kind of get to learn more about her and see how she interacts with people. And I just love the way these books are written. I can eat them up in like 6 hours. Oh my gosh, what would you know? Another Colleen Hoover book. This one's November 9th. I loved this book. This book had a bigger twist than Verity even. I'm going there. I'm saying it. And when you get to like, it's another one of those where like the last 100 pages, you just can't stop reading. Like you have to know how it ends. Oh, whoa. It's another Virgin River novel. Wow, what are you doing here? This is Second Chance Pass, but this, so good. They just introduced a character on the TV show who was in, I think all three of the last. Yeah, he was in Paradise Valley, Temptation Ridge, and Second Chance Pass. And they just introduced him in the TV show. Alright. As Good as Dead. I read, so this is the second book. This is the third book of a trilogy. The first one was called A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And this one kind of wraps up the whole story and like helps you see that like not all the characters were evil, and especially like the girl who is like the center of this whole series, she's dead, but like you see in this book that she wasn't like the evil mean girl of high school. She actually like had really like good motivations, and it's sad how it ended up. But holy moly, this book, shocking. And I kind of had an inkling because the character who's the bad guy in this story, the whole story, like over the course of the 3 books, I was like, you creepy. Just red flags everywhere. So, such a good book. Such a good end to this series too. Like I was really happy with how it ended. Next up is Darling Girl. Darling Girl is a retake on Peter Pan. If Peter Pan was evil. And kind of like a horrible person. Alright, next up we have a monster. We have Land of the Firebird. This is about Russia. It tells you everything about how Russia was created, to how the religion was established, to rulers of all the different dynasties, because there were like 4 different dynasties, and it tells you like about different authors and different artists. Ballet was created in Russia, and different musical pieces that are like iconic today, how they came to be in like old Russia. And it's just like, it does take a while. I mean, look how thick that is, but so worth it. It's so cool to learn about a culture, and kind of be able to like envision it for yourself. There's a lot of, things going on with Russia right now. They're not being very great at the moment, but this book is definitely worth the time to read. Alright, so this kind of marks the halfway point of this video, and instead of posting the entire hour-long clip of me explaining every book, I'm going to split it in half. So this first half will go up, and then a little bit later the second half will go up. Don't worry, because I'm going to work on editing the second half as soon as I download and export this footage. But I hope you enjoyed the first half of what I've read so far this year. Mind you that this is only to the beginning of August, or like middle of August. So who knows where we will be at by the time December rolls around, which is literally like just 16 weeks away. It's insane. I hope you guys have a fabulous day, and I will see you in a very short time for part 2. Have a good day, guys.